Hi everybody. Today we are going to start with the session on reduction of system software. System software, it's a set of programs which is used to control the computer. So in this session, we are going to discuss about some of the topics which is on the introduction of a system software, wherein we are going to discuss about the definition and difference between system software and application software, machine architecture, especially the simplified instruction computer, SIC and SICXC. So these are the topics we are going to cover in this particular session. So what is the purpose of system software? System software is set of programs so that insulate the complex things about the system from the programmer. So whatever the programmer, when he or she wants to execute the program, the complexity behind the executions will be insulated by the system software. That's where it is between the interface between the user and the program. Coming to the difference between application software and system software. Application software is a set of program, or we can say the software, which is meant for a specific task. So in order to solve a problem, we have the application software, especially in terms of word processor, reading a Gmail, reading a Yahoo Mail. So these kind of applications we can perform. A specific task can be performed by using the application software. Whereas system software is designed to operate the systems. In order to run the application or to create the applications, we use the system software. So the system software, which is basically operated in order to run the application, and also it is machine dependency. We can say of system software having machine dependency. So these are the some of the differences we have with respect to system software and application software. So when sometimes the system software, we have the system software which is coming with our system, whereas the application software we need to install separately. And when you have the system software, so which is basically used to run the application, whereas the application software which is used by the user to perform a specific task. The system software can run independently, whereas this application software can't run independently because we need the system software to run the application. So these are the few differences we have with respect to system software and application software. Coming to the definition of system software, the system software which consisting of a variety of programs that will help, that will be used to operate the system. So it control the hardware of the system as well. So there are plenty of definitions we have. So we can say it's a software which is which controls the hardware, so that the application software can perform its task. So without any hurdle, the application software can run the can be executed. So for that purpose, we use the system software. So we can say the operating system is one of the examples for system software. Apart from, there are plenty of applications we are having. These are the examples, are the types of system software we can see. There are compilers, assembler, linker, loader, and debuggers. These are the types of system software we have. When you take the compiler which is used to translate the programming language into the machine code or the object code, we can say. So basically the compiler and assembler does the conversion. It translates the source program into object program. When it comes to the source program which is written in higher level languages, we use the compiler. Whereas when you use assembly language program, that time we can go with the assembler. So both in both the cases, compiler and assembler, we translate the source program into object program. Coming to the linker, it combines and resolves references. So whenever you use external references, external symbols, so in order to resolve those things, we use the linker. So it combines too many programs, so more object programs, two or more object programs. In order to combine these things, we have the linker. Loads the program and it starts the execution. Coming to the debugger, it is used to fix the error, and in order to debug the errors, we need to identify. So wherein we have the trace back, all these properties, functions we can use in the debugging tools. These are the different types of system software we have. Coming to the next concept, that is machine architecture. So if you take the system software, the different types of system software are different examples of this system software, wherein some of the features which can vary according to the machine, some of the features which don't change the it won't change. Right? It will not vary according to the machine architecture. So if you look at the machine code, instruction format, addressing mode, registers, these will be changed according to machine. Whereas the subprogramming, linking, code optimization, the program design and logic, it won't depend on the machine. So the independency of the system software, which comes with the code optimization, subprogramming, linking, design and logic. So it's basically same respective of the system machine architecture. When you take the system software, these are the things which we normally do. What are the functions, the machine dependent features, machine independent features, the design options, what are the implementation part, that is examples of the system software. So coming to the first machine architecture, that is a simplified instructional computer. So wherein we have two machine architecture. One is SAC and another one is SAC XC. So why do we go with this SAC or SAC XC? What is the reason behind why we go with this simplified instruction computers? So in order to avoid the unique feature, okay, so each and every machine has their own behavior, own characteristics. In order to avoid that unique feature, and we would like to focus on the common features or the fundamental features, the central features. That's where we choose the SIC instructional computer. So we have two versions, the standard model and XC version. XC is nothing but extra equipment, or we can say extra expensive. XE nothing but extra equipment or extra expensive. So the SIC machine has upward compatibility. What is the meaning of upward compatibility? When you write a program in SIC, those program can run on SIC XC machine, but there is no downward compatibility, only the upward compatibility use here. So whenever you write a program in SIC, you can run on the SIC XC as well. We'll move on to the features of SIC. So if you take the machine architecture, whether it is an SIC or SIC XC, there are certain features we concentrate, some of the features, common features we concentrate, focus on. Those are memory, instruction format, data format, registers, an instruction set. We have addressing mode, and finally input and output operation. So these are the features we are going to discuss with respect to SIC machine and as well as SIC XC machine. So coming to the SIC architecture, so the first feature is memory. So what is the capacity of the memory in SIC is 2 power 15 bytes. It's nothing but 32,768 bytes. So this is the capacity which we have in SIC with respect to memory. If you take the consecutive bytes, so the memory is contiguous memory locations wherein the consecutive 3 bytes will form a single word. So that's nothing but 24 bits, 3 bytes, consecutive 3 bytes are nothing but the 24 bits which will form a single word. So this representation we use in SIC as well as in SIC XC. Coming to the second feature, registers. We have 5 registers in SIC, each having 24-bit registers capacity. So the data storage can be 24 bits. So there are 5 registers A, X, L, PC and SW. A register is nothing but accumulator register. So it is used for arithmetic operations. So whenever perform arithmetic operation, that time we can use the accumulator. And it is numbered as 0. The second register is X register. It's an index register which is used for addressing. And it is numbered as 1. Coming to the third register, it's a linkage register which is used in jump instructions. So whenever there is a subroutine which is called by using the jump instruction JSUB. So that time, in order to store the written address, we use the linkage register L. This number as 2. Coming to the fourth one, that is a PC, program counter. Basically, the program counter which contains the address of the next instruction which needs to be fetched for execution. So it represents or it specify the next instruction's address. And coming to the SW, it is a status for which contains the condition code also. The condition code has the value as less than, greater than, or equal to. So these are the 5 registers we have in the SIC machine. So while numbering, we have 0, 1, 2, then 8 and 9. 3 to 7, these numbers are reserved for future use. Especially we use in the SIC XC machine when after SIC, when the SIC XC was released, that time those numbers were used for that purpose. Coming to the next feature, that is a data format. We have 2 types of data we use in SIC. One is the characters and another one is the integer. For characters, the storage is 8-bit ASCII code, and integers, it uses 24-bit binary numbers. It can have positive and negatives. If it is a negative value, then the 2's complement representation can be used for representing negative values. There is no floating point numbers in SIC machine. Okay, so in order to get the 2's complement value for the negative numbers, which is shown in the table. Coming to the next feature, that is instruction format. So when the instruction is written in the SIC machine, how it has to be. So how the programmer write the instruction. They have to follow the format. That's where we use the instruction format. See, the instruction format having 24 bits, out of which 8 bits is representing opcode, 1 bit is representing X, then the 15 bits are representing the address. So in opcode field, it represents the operation code. So what is the operation we perform using the instructions? So in that particular instructions, what is the operation is being carried out, that is represented by the opcode. It can be called as mnemonic as well. And X bit, that will be deciding what kind of addressing we use in the instruction. And the address field is nothing but it is representing the address of the symbol. So which symbol we use in the instructions, what is the address where the symbol is located, that is given by the address. Say for example, let have an instruction like LDA 5. Okay, so 5 is in the address 11A. Okay, so when you represent this opcode, so for LDA, we use the corresponding value for the LDA 00. That is summation equivalent for the LDA. So this 00 can be represented as 4 zeros followed by zeros because the X bit is 0. Then we have the value for the address. So address 11A, that is represented by 001, 0001, 1010. This is how we represent the entire instruction in binary format. So when you use any instruction, when you write as a programmer, when you write any instruction, it has to follow the instruction format which is in the SAC machine. So the reason behind why we use this X bit is it is meant for addressing purpose. Okay, so that we will see in the next slides. Coming to this addressing mode, as I already told you that the X bit is meant for addressing purpose. So if you look at the X value, so X will be having 1 bit. So the 1 bit is represented by either 0 or 1. If X is 0, then the target address calculation will be done as per this formula. So TEA is called as the target address. What do you mean by target address is address of the target, which means the target which we represent as the symbol, what we use in the instruction. Say for example, in the previous instruction LDA 5. So 5 is your symbol, that is a target. So where the 5 is located, where the 5 is stored in the location 11A. So this is what the address, target address of that particular symbol. So when X bit is 0, T is equal to address. And X bit is equal to 1, T is equal to address plus X within bracket. So within bracket, which is representing as the content of the X register. So the content of the X register is added with the existing address that will be giving the target address when if the X value is 1. So if the X value is 1, the type of addressing is called as indexed addressing. If the X is 0, the type of addressing is called as the direct addressing. So there are two types of addressing mode we have in SAC. One is direct, another one is a indexed addressing. Coming to the instruction set, what we use in the SAC machine is we have different types of instruction set. Name it as load and store registers, then arithmetic operations, comparisons, conditional sum instructions, subroutine linkage. So these are the different types of operations we perform for which we use the instruction set. Say for example, the first case, load and store registers, where we can use the instruction sets as LDA, LDX, STA and STX. So what do you mean by LDA is, so load into the accumulator. So when you use the previous example LDA 5, so the 5, the content of the 5 in that symbol 5, that is the value of the symbol 5 which is loaded into the accumulator A. So that is where LDA. Similarly LDX, so whatever we mention the symbol, from that symbol the content will be loaded into the X register. X is the index register. Then STA, so store from the accumulator to the symbol. Say for example STA 5 if you have, then from the accumulator to the symbol 5 the value will be stored. Similarly STX also. So these are called as load and store registers. The second type is integer arithmetic operations, which involves the register A and the word in the memory. Suppose if you have a register instruction sets like add. So add, you are using some variable or the symbol 5. Let us assume add 5. So what happens is the content of the 5 and the content of the accumulator. These two will be added and the result is stored in the accumulator. That is why if you look at how the operation is performed in individual arithmetic operation is, which involves register A and a word in memory. So these two values are added and the result is again stored in the accumulator. So A is nothing but accumulator. That is why when we were discussing about the accumulator in the registers, I was telling you that this accumulator is used for arithmetic operations. So when you involve addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, we use the accumulator. Similar to addition, same way we can do the subtraction, multiplication, and division. Coming to the third operation, that is comparison. Here we use the instruction set as COMP. In this, based on the condition code value, so what it has to do, that will be done. So it involves register A and the word in the memory. They save the result in condition code, which means that whatever is there in the accumulator, the content in the accumulator, and what is there in the memory, that is the symbol, so which both will be compared, and the result is, say, for example, whether A is less than that symbol, A is greater than the symbol, or A is equal to the symbol, that value will be stored in the condition code. So based on which it will be whether it has to do the jumping instruction. The next operation is jumping. So jumping will be based on the condition code. So according to the value in the condition code, the jump instructions will be performed. Say for example, we have the instruction like JLE. So jump if the condition code is less than. JEQ, jump if the condition code is equal to. JGT, jump if the condition code is greater than. So based on this value, these values in the condition code, the jump instructions will make a operation. Then coming to this last one, subroutine linkage. So herein we use two instruction set. One is JSUB and other one is a RSUB. JSUB is basically jump to the subroutine. When it makes the jump, it stores the return address in the linkage registers. As we already discussed about the linkage register in the registers in SAC machine architecture, where I was telling you that linkage register used to store the return address. So when it stores the return address, whenever there is a jump instructions, jump to the subroutine, it stores the return address in the L registers. When it completes the subroutine, when it is coming back to the main program, so where it has to come back, to which address it has to come back, that is given by the linkage register. That is where when you make RSUB, return to the address which is there in the linkage register. So this is how these are the different instruction set we use in the SAC machine architecture. Moving on to the last feature, that is input and output. So when you want to do the operation, either it is an input operation or output operations, you have to involve the devices. Either it is an input device or the output device. So each IO, that is either it is an input or output device, which is assigned unique 8-bit code. Okay, so when you want to read something from the input device or you want to write into the output device, so for which we need to use the accumulator. So what is the purpose of this accumulator is it is used to read 1 byte at a time to or from the rightmost 8 bits of the register. So for example, when you want to read something, so you are reading 8-bit character from the input device and that is being stored in the accumulator. Similarly, when you want to write something, so from the accumulator, it has been written into the output device. So in order to make the input or output operations, we need to use some of the instructions which are TD, RD and WD. TD is nothing but test device. So in order to test the device, we use the instruction called TD. What is the purpose? Why do we need to test the devices? So if you want to make either the input or output operation, first of all, we need to check whether the device is ready or not. Either it is an input device or output device. In order to check the device is ready to send or receive, we use the TD, that is test device. How do we know that whether it is ready or not? If the condition code has the value less than, then it is ready. If it has the value equal, then the device is not ready. So till the device is getting ready, we keep checking with the TD. Okay, so we can put the TD in the loop so that if the condition code has the value equal to, keep on calling the TD in the loop so that it will be checking the device. Once the condition code became less than, then the device is ready, then you can go ahead for either input operation or the output operations. It is based on the result in the CC condition code. Now, if you want to do the read operation, then you can go ahead with the read data. If you would like to perform write operation, you can go ahead with the write data. So in read data, what it performs is read 1 byte from the device to the register. So from the input device, it reads a character that's nothing but 1 byte and it stores in the accumulator. Similarly, when you want to write or do the write operation, it writes 1 byte from the register into the device. So this is how the input and output operations will be performed in SAC machine. So in SAC machine, we have different features. Starting from the memory has 2 power 15 bytes. And the second feature is registers. In the registers in SAC, we have 5 registers: accumulator, index register, linkage register, program counter, and status word. So these are the 5 registers we have in SAC machine. So accumulator is meant for arithmetic operation, index is meant for addressing purpose, then L register is meant for linkage, it is used to store the return address, then PC is representing the address of the next instruction, SW is meant for status word, it contains the condition code. As we already saw in many places, the condition code has the value less than or equal to and greater than values. Coming to the third feature, that is data format, we have 2 different data that we have in SAC. One is integer and the other one is a character. And moving on to the instruction format, so we have a certain format which needs to be followed by a programmer to write an instruction in assembly language program, especially SAC machine architecture. So there are 3 different columns. One is the opcode, the second one is the X bit, the third one is the address field. So opcode contains 8 bit, X bit which has 1 bit value, then address field we have 15 bits. So based on the X value, we can have the different types of addressing mode. If the X value is 0, it represents direct addressing mode. If the X value is 1, it represents the indexed addressing mode. This is how we have the different types of addressing modes. So moving on to the instruction set, we have load and store registers, we have arithmetic operations, we have comparisons, then conditional jump instructions, and finally the subroutine linkage. These are the operations which are need to be performed, for which we have different set of instructions we are using. And lastly, we have the input and output operations. So for which there are 3 different instructions are to be used. One is TD, RD, and WD. So these are the instructions which are need to be used while we perform input operations or the output operations. Okay, so this is what about the SAC machine architecture. Similar to the SAC machine architecture, we have SAC XC also. So moving on to the SAC XC architecture, again we'll be discussing about the memory. registers, data format, instruction format, instruction set, addressing mode, and finally the input and output operations. So since SAC XC, it's an advanced version, so there might be little changes in the SAC XC compared with the SAC machine. So first feature is memory. So here we have larger memory compared with the SAC. In SAC machine, we have used 2 power 15 bytes of storage, whereas here we use 2 power 20 bytes of storage. That is nothing but 1 megabyte. Okay, so from the 32,768 bytes to it is extended to 1 megabyte storage. Similar to SAC, the 3 consecutive bytes will be forming a single word. This is with respect to memory. Coming to the second feature, registers. So already we discussed the 5 registers in SAC. So those 5 registers also been used in SAC XC as well. With that, addition to that, we have 4 more registers. Those registers are B, S, T, and F. B register is meant for base register and it is used for addressing purpose, and S and T registers are the general working registers. So it is also called general purpose registers. It is meant for some specific special use. And coming to the F register is representing floating point register. So as we knew that in SAC, we use 2 data types. One is integer and other one is a character. So there is no floating point values can be used in the SAC. Whereas in SAC XC, we can use, that is the reason why do we have F registers in SAC XC. So this is meant for floating point. So in order to perform the operation using the floating point values, wherein we can involve the F registers. So that is how totally we have 9 registers in SAC XC architecture. Moving on to the data format, as I already told you that there are 2 formats in SAC. So in addition to that, we are having one more data type, that is nothing but floating point numbers. So in integers, we have 24-bit binary number. Characters, we have 8-bit Cascade code. The floating point, we have 48 bits of floating point numbers. So herein, we can represent the 48 bits as sign bit 1 bit, exponent bit 11 bits, and fraction bit 36 bits. So totally there are 48 bits. Sign bit will be having either 0 or 1 value. If it is representing 0, then it is a positive value. If it is representing 1, it is a negative value. And the fraction value f, that is ranging between 0 and 1. So the exponent is again, it's an unsigned binary number. It's ranging from 0 to 2047. How do we represent the floating point value? It is represented as -1 to the power s. So s can be either 0 or 1. If it is 0, then it will become positive. If it is 1, it becomes negative number. And f represent the fraction, and 2 power e minus 1024, that e represent the exponent value. So the exponent value and the fraction value which is represented in the format. Okay, so that the sign bit, exponent bit, and fraction bit, altogether we have the 48 bits. This is how we use the fractional point number. So the higher order bit must be 1 when it is normalized. Moving on to the next feature, that is the instruction format. Okay. So the instruction format which we will be having in the next class.